Hello, everyone. Welcome to FoxTales episode 8. We started this effort back in January, and we've been running these monthly, having our roundtable discussions on a host of different topics. We've interviewed a lot of customers. We've had a lot of internal calls, conversations on here. We decided we'd take the opportunity for the month of July to talk about the current state of AI. You may have heard of it. It's something that's new. People are talking about it a little bit. We want to talk about specifically why people are on the AI struggle bus. It seems that everywhere we go, we're hearing endless amounts of talk about possibilities around AI. And we're hearing a lot of fever pitch about people spending money on it, pouring research into it, doing trial runs of things, but we're not seeing a lot of organizations that realize a lot of success for it yet. So we're going to dive into that a little bit more deeply today and see if we can help everybody get a good game plan on how they can turn their AI projects into profitable AI projects, which really are the rarity today. So let me go ahead and do some quick introductions. Joining me today, we have John Manner and Paul Schaefer. Both of us are, all three of us are senior leaders with the SnowFox team. We've also all been in the IT world for 25 plus years. I know you wouldn't think it to look at us that we're that old, but that's true. So we have all been around to see a lot of transformations. I think we've seen everything from the days of dial-up to early days of the internet. We've seen the browser wars. We've seen the dot-com boom and bust. We've seen all of these things happen. So we have an interesting perspective of what we're seeing today with the AI boom. We're not at bust yet, but we're at boom. We're definitely looking at a new technology and figuring out how it fits into everybody's lives. We're going to talk about it today from a business and enterprise standpoint. So let me go ahead and kick this off with a question. We'll start with Paul on this one. What is your honest read about where AI really is beyond the headlines?
Great question. I think if anybody is spending, more than 10 minutes a week on LinkedIn and other articles, the biggest thing right now is costs misalignment. You're seeing it consistently, interview after interview after interview, and headlines. Costs are up, 300% a quarter, but then the outputs are less than 5% as far as what they're saving the company. And that is obviously a very upside down and lopsided ratio, but it's also very challenging because all of these technology stacks and companies are changing their pricing real time, moving the target real time, and that's a significant thing to try to even capture and contain. So costs are absolutely through the roof without the value being there.
John, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll tag on to that a little bit. And so, like, where is enterprise AI really right now? The capabilities there, but the confidence and the plan are not. That's the struggle bus that we see everybody on. I looked it up earlier, and there's like currently, that's probably changed just in this call, 11,000 AI companies out there. And so the vendor landscape is just analysis paralysis in itself.
Yeah.
Uh, Everyone's selling a point solution, but nobody's selling anything that's like, oh, this is your vision kind of thing. And so I was at a conference like 3 months ago, 2 months ago, and room full of very smart IT leaders, CFOs, CIOs, and there was this near universal uncertainty about where to even start. Not whether to adopt AI. They know they will have to adopt AI, but they don't know where to begin. And so that's where enterprise AI is right now. We're just in this chaotic, all these solutions being thrown at us, but no guide to get there. That's where it's at right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually saw it was a headline I was seeing last week from a government official out of the UK that AI is still experimental. And my first reaction to that is it can't be experimental. We're 4 years into this journey since the advent of ChatGPT. But the reality is we're still trying to figure out where it fits. And I think that's what a lot of people are still. It's the proverbial solution looking for a problem. And I think that's one of the things that we're seeing a lot of. So, is this a technology problem or is this a business problem? John, you want to go first on that one?
Well, yes, it depends. It is primarily a business problem, but the technology is also the problem too. Um, I mean, we're seeing hyper changes in the AI landscape, and so the tools are struggling because they're being rolled out so quickly. I'm sure if someone's listening to this and they're just using Codex or Cowork, they're running into issues with it just doing what it's supposed to. We're way past it gives us the wrong information. It still does that, but it does it more confidently now, so we don't detect it as well. We're running into more just buggy software, and that's the nature of how fast it's moving. That aside, the bigger problem is the business gap. The business doesn't know how to wrap their arms around it. They don't know how to manage governance because their entire teams are already using all these tools. So they've lost governance. It's already flittered away. And I've seen so many job postings out there, the same job posting, I think, actually, from all these companies. They must copy and paste it for AI governance come in and wrangle all this together. And I don't know how they can because it's out in the wild already. And so that's the biggest gap. It's a business gap.
Paul, anything you'd add?
Yeah, I tend to look at things a little differently in that I like to try to compare them to previous compelling events. And let's use cloud as one, somewhat recent example. Back when that was disrupting all of IT, back in the day, you had limited options in that disruption. You had a couple of key players. You pretty much knew it was expensive and you pretty much knew what functionality was available. And you could at least get some teams trained up and move forward. And you may not choose to do so because it was at the time of its early stages, it was crazy expensive and the pay per drip was just astronomical, but it was somewhat contained, right? So now let's piggyback on what John just said. So now in today's disruption, as of today at 1:06 p.m. Eastern time, we have 11,000 technology options that are out there. None of them are working together. You are not going to get any sort of alignment on what your beacon is, right? So I would say that that's a tools in a business black hole that is just feeding each other there. The tools are confusing organizations, and the leadership teams in these organizations simply are caught in this massive sort of FOBO moment where they simply are struggling to make that key decision on where and how to move forward. All the while, everything about it is changing daily. So, have we been through it before? Yes, somewhat, but not at this level of pseudo chaos here, right? Everybody that we're talking to at SnowFox is telling us that same thing. We don't know where to start. Seems like every day I'm seeing that there's another capability that can eliminate this entire stack over here, and we can just rather than paying for all these licenses for our SaaS platforms, we can just build a different one that suits our needs. All of which are true, except for by next Thursday, you've got a whole different set of technologies that are better and are not just a little bit better. They're a lot better. So it really disrupts that kind of business and tooling discussions that we've been so used to for the past couple of decades. I would argue it's not it's not as feasible as some of the things that we've seen in the past where you can sit down, bring some really talented and smart people together and get a plan together pretty quickly. That is a very, very challenging thing today.
Yeah, there's two things that you keyed in on there, Paul. I'd like to double click on. So first is you mentioned the cloud. So when we were transitioning things to the cloud, it was a very definable problem. It's like we have all of this hardware we're supporting. We have the reliance on local connectivity. We have all these things that are a problem. They're an impediment to our business. And if we can move them to the cloud, in a safer environment, we have to spend less on our data security. We have more redundancy. We have backups. We had all of these things. So that was a very easy solution to a real world problem. It was very easy to say, hey, we're going to do this because it will solve for X. And one of the things that I continue to see is that people are still trying to figure out what to do with AI. It is that solution looking for a problem because it can do pretty much anything as we've seen. And we don't have a problem statement that it is going to address, at least not a single one. And I think that's one of the things that I've been seeing is a lot of organizations are still trying to define the problem statement, let alone figuring out how they're going to solve for it. And to John's point, we have those 11,000 companies. What's the average age of those companies?
Yeah.
Many of these have been in
36
business
days.
for,
Yeah.
yeah, 30, 60, 90 days. Yeah. Hit your maturity level. That's that's not something you're going to bank the future of your business on. You need that maturity, you need some stability. Even 20 minutes ago, a good friend of mine sent me a link to another new AI tool that I haven't even read yet. And I think a lot of us are getting some AI fatigue of all these brand new technologies that haven't yet landed. They don't have a home. So, that's something that I think a lot of professionals, a lot of business execs, a lot of leaders, IT people, they're all struggling with how do I use this? How do I use it reliably? And what problem does it solve? All right, so let's move into when you're walking into an organization and you're seeing them struggle with AI. Paul, you mentioned that there's a lack of ROI. John, you mentioned that there's different options. Is there anything that you're seeing consistently that is the issue that's really preventing them from making headway with this?
That's a great question, and I would argue probably should be the most asked question in any organization right now. We talked about too many options, and there's just no focus area. What we're seeing specifically, though, is really just call it somewhat of a fear on where to even move forward in the business. You have to start with, to your point, James, you have to start with a big problem that you're trying to solve. The tooling options are just too significant out there. You're never going to land on the right one until you look at what you're trying to solve first. And I think that strategic, quantifiable aspect of that conversation needs to be happening. So what is the use case there? And you read this all over different, Reddit and LinkedIn, et cetera. You got the C-suite demanding AI with no context, right? They know what its capabilities are, they know its potential. But when you're putting that pressure on that next tier down, you really do have, paralysis and fear on what area of the business to go invest in because it isn't just a financial investment from a dollars in licensing costs. You've got to pretty much take the team and look at this like a process improvement initiative. You have to be able to sit down and say some things out loud as a team, and saying those things out loud are uncomfortable. For example, if you've got a uh, 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 procurement process that is too long, or whatever those big problems are, those teams working together to say those things out loud, be strategic in what you're trying to focus on and work on and quantify it the best you can. Those conversations need to be happening. Don't try to cram any, Claude or any of these other tools to just go start, building things out. Start with a real life problem and don't even do that unless you can quantify it to some degree. Take the time, find the leaders that can help you with that and get those people together in some sort of collaborative session to have those conversations and pick one thing and move that forward. Don't worry about the FOBO. Don't worry about the tools. Movement over motion every day, all day.
Absolutely. We keep hearing excuses. The data's not ready. There's not good integration. Things are changing very fast. But I think a lot of that is missing. The main point is that people are still they're not starting with a problem statement saying I need to improve this. And I've said this probably 10,000 times over the past few years is the fundamentals still matter. The processes themselves that you're doing matter. And you can use AI to improve some of those processes, but you have to understand your processes first. You have to understand where the bottlenecks are. You need to figure out where the redundant, low value work is being done. And that's where you can start to use the tool. This is really, it's like standing in front of your toolbox and saying, all right, I'm just going to start doing stuff. and that's usually not a plan for success.
Right.
John, we've been doing SDLC using the Agile methodology for, well over a decade. We always start with user stories and personas, and we say, as this person, I need to be able to do this. And I think that's something that has completely gotten lost over the last couple of years in this frenzy around this new tooling. The tooling is great, and there's nobody that loves the shiny technology more than I do. But when it comes to actually seeing results, you still have to have something to drive it. And I think, I'd like you to speak to this a little bit, because John, this is your area, the people and change management aspect of this. Talk a little bit about the different responses that you see from people within an organization, not just the execs, but the people down at the individual contributor level and how they're responding to this.
Okay, yeah, I got a two for answer to that, and I'm going to go back to Paul's statement about having a process first because I have a tangible example around that. I can't say the name of the company, obviously, because they're still working on it, but a manufacturer in North Carolina, I'll say it that way. They deployed a local LLM trained on their own internal documents to take over accounts receivable. They didn't buy 40 tools. They picked one company to deliver that one process, and they went deep on it. They knew their data was bad. They knew their processes are bad. They knew everything was bad that would normally prevent a normal project like this going, because they knew that was the baseline. And so their intent is they didn't ask what AI can do. They had a problem of they asked, what does AR cost us and how do we influence that? That's the whole difference behind this. And yes, one thing that no one is saying, and it's still a discussion point, and even in the conference I was at, none of the CEOs were talking about it. That exact project is workforce replacement. It's designed to replace that entire AI process and team. And so when you talk about then going to OCM, there's fear around this. There should be fear around it. And so there's misunderstandings too, because these projects could be replacement, but they could also be augmentation. They could be just efficiencies. There's a whole slew of things that OCM is designed to break down that companies, people are not putting in place because, as you know, OCM is the last item of a project to be implemented. And so when we talk about OCM, it's important to define why you're doing this and be transparent, trust transparency for this project. Otherwise, there'll be a lot of misunderstandings about what this project is for. Everyone part of this project knows why it's being put in place, and that was from the leadership down. That's the intent behind it. And so when we talk about OCM and then also even governance around it, why do projects fail? Lack of governance.
Absolutely. Paul, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, that's a great perspective. And boy, you hate to really call some things out that are back to basics as far as how these leaders are working together in the organizations. But you have to call these things out and address them and discuss them openly with your leadership group. This goes back to, what's higher than OCM, and that's just, transformation in general. And if the organizations don't understand it and aren't buying into it, it is dead day one, right? So having those transparent conversations and addressing this, but also too, I'm gonna sprinkle in just a little bit of extra here. This is changing the way we work, period. And the sooner that organizations see that and understand and are discussing what that means after these initiatives are complete, the better. To John's example, um, not every AI initiative is, removing capacity in team members from organizations. It's augmenting, it's changing what work is being done. You're eliminating some of the manual processes and things of that nature. But a lot of companies aren't saying that out loud. They're not addressing that and just being secure in that conversation and being transparent in that conversation. And I think that's a big mistake. We're at a significant compelling opportunity here. And the companies that are doing it right are calling that out, and they're just changing the work for groups in the organizations, be it the PMO, be it specific teams in IT. Can you imagine, and piggybacking on John's example, can you imagine what the security industry is going through right now? I've got almost a decade in that space. That is changing daily for those people, right? Of course, they're using AI. Of course, they're eliminating some of the manual work. But at the end of the day, they have to address it and they have to say it out loud and work together to say, this is how we plan to use these technologies to make our lives better and to protect our customers or to protect this company better.
Yeah, that's definitely a leadership challenge is you're not going to get your teams excited about implementing something that is going to implement them out of a job.
Right?
So there's definitely an OCM aspect to all of this. And I don't think a single customer that I've talked to, if the primary purpose is employee reduction, you are absolutely looking at this wrong because
Yeah.
the people who are doing this right are looking at it as a capability enhancement. It's
Yeah.
a force multiplier. It is not a force reduction. So,
Right.
that's one of the big challenges, and that's as much a PR thing as it is the
Yeah.
reality.
Yeah.
So
James,
there's
look at the Salesforce thing, right? So I forget the exact number. Wasn't it 6,000 or something? I mean, it was significant. They swung that pendulum over, cut all of those heads. What was it? 60 days later, they're like, oops, the costs of all these AI are like 4x our employees, and now they're bringing some folks back. It's because they didn't sit down and talk through this and plan it out and organizational OCM impact on them. That is a leadership team issue there. Like they have to be able to be transparent. So, and a great example for others to learn from.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just being mindful of time, I think we've talked a lot about the problem. I think the solution for a lot of organizations, it's still the fundamentals. Start with a problem statement, come up with a plan, and then also have everybody get on board for that plan and implement it to where you're actually going to see results and not just frighten people. These sound simple, but this is a world where we can very easily create a lot of fluff, but not a lot of value. And if you focus on that value and you focus on small incremental things, that's going to be the way that you're going to make this what's the cliche, an evolution, not a revolution. All right, so let's go ahead and switch into our rapid fire part of this conversation. John Manner, what is one AI prediction for the next 12 months that you expect to see?
Okay, next 12 months is going to be different from my 12 to 18 months, but next 12 months, it's going to increase from 11,000 companies to 33,000 companies in AI. The divide widens. Governance is still shoved down to a compliance check because no one understands that yet. Um, and the fear of AI agents replacing whole teams will increase. However, like we just talked about, even my example from that other company, it's workforce reassignment. Primarily, is going to be drivers around that. And so companies with governed data and clear processes to focus on will pull away, while everybody else will be focused buying tools and licenses. That's my prediction.
All right. And Paul, what is the most overhyped thing in AI right now and the most underhyped thing?
Overhyped is going to be benefit. There are very few use cases out there, examples where organizations are saying we spent this much money on AI and we've got this much return. That is just not a thing right now. There's too many major impactful downfalls to the projects and the large scale initiatives. It's just completely overhyped at this point. Everybody is just buying into art of possible and not true positive impact for organizations. Underhyped. I think underhyping is going to be around the impact to SaaS. Um, Everything in my DNA tells me that SaaS is just taking more and more nails in their coffin, and I mean the large ones too. The art of possible here is to be completely rebuild these full loop stack capabilities for major fractions of the cost of these large platforms. They've bloated into significant licensing costs And I think that's going to be one of the most underlooked and underhyped things right now is I think that's going to quickly change. And I think a lot of organizations are going to see significant impact to their bottom line because AI as a service is going to be the new thing.
Yeah, that barrier to entry for a Salesforce, for a
Yep,
service, for an Oracle, all of these, hey, we'll come in and spend $5 million to implement this software, or you could hire, some kid who graduated last June and he's going to
right.
be able to build all of this in a couple of days.
That's right.
There's definitely challenges to that model, but that downward price pressure is real. And it's just one of the things I keep at my desk as a little prop is when I'm talking to these business leaders who just want AI at any cost. Like, all right, well, I've got a bag of AI right here.
Yeah,
Let me
yeah.
That's a
send
good
this to
prop.
you.
It's a
Send
good
me
prop.
$100,000 and I'll send you a bag of AI because that's about
Right.
all I understand of what you just said.
Yeah.
I need to hear somebody say, I have a problem or I have a process that is slowing us down and I need a way to be able to solve for it. That's where AI can help and that's where SnowFox can help. So that's what we're talking about today is let's get all these people who are trying to get the value out of it, focus on the problem statements, and then we can figure out how to solution for something. Because if you don't come to me with a problem, the specific, I can't help you fix it. So, I think that's the big takeaway for a lot of these organizations is stop with the hype, stop throwing money at something just willy-nilly. You have to come up with a game plan and you have to have a real reason that you're doing this, not just wanting to be the first one to the game to play with this new toy we have.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to add one thing to Paul said. Like, you're absolutely right. I think SaaS is going to have a lot of pressure on it. And if you have a process and a kid, we're going to pick on the kids today in this call. If they come to you and say they're going to vibe code a solution for you, I'd run. But if a company, Snowbox, comes to you and says they're going to come have a bespoke custom app that is production ready and is following capability,
Yeah.
that's something you probably want to entertain because that's going to change. That's where everything's going. It's going to be very important in the 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I know we're about out of time. I just want to say thank you to my fellow panelists here, and look forward to seeing everybody who's watching this out in the wild. And let's see what we can get some real progress with this new toy we have. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you again next month.